Shalom, my friends. So I'm pre-recording this message to you because I cannot leave the farm this afternoon, and we are fully expecting to lose electricity and internet again, which it's been happening every evening around the same time, which is the time of the fellowship. So while I'm hoping to be there with you live, I'm just far from sure that's going to be possible. So this week at the farm, we had some very special guests. We always have special guests here, but over the years, our farm, I've seen it tends to be like a magnet for holiness, not only from the Jewish people, but from the nations of the world. We've even had the great honor and joy of hosting many of you, our fellowship family, here at the farm. So this week, we had something called a tish here at the farm, in which Hasidim come together and celebrate the completion of a certain tractate of learning, for example, or even just celebrate existence itself with learning and praying and singing and eating and just gathering around their Rebbe. Not only to hear his teachings, but to study his every movement. It's really inspiring seeing the reverence they have for their Rebbe, who teaches them the Torah that they hold so dear. So, sometimes it makes me want a little bit more of that. You know, we've had the Biala sect of Hasidim with the great Biala Rebbe himself, the Slonima Yeshiva with the Slonima Rebbe himself, and this week we had in the middle of the night the great, revered, universally respected Amshinova Rebbe show up. Now, it's hard to convey exactly how big a deal this is. I mean, people have to wait weeks to spend 3 minutes with one of these Rebbes and ask for advice or guidance, or even just to get a bracha, a blessing from one of these Rebbes. So the fact that we have so many of these Rebbes converging on our farm, completely without any recruitment on our part, no efforts on our part of their own volition, it just strengthens my feeling that Hashem is doing something very special out here in Judea at our farm. Hashem is bringing a certain healing and unity to Israel at our farm in ways which I see with my eyes, but I readily admit I don't understand with my mind. Anyways, here's a video which you can see the students who have been up all night, and despite their exhaustion, they're hanging on every word that emerges from the mouth of their Rebbe. So here's the video. And at Shayna's suggestion, I actually brought Shiloh down to see the Rebbe and be near him. So here's a picture of Shiloh posing with the Rebbe. So the Amshinova sect of Hasidim, like all of the different Hasidim, they revere their Rebbe. And I just wanted to show you, maybe it's too much, I just wanted to show you a short video of this Rebbe dancing at a wedding of one of his Hasidim, which I guarantee you was the highlight of this young groom's life and the young bride's life. So here's the Rebbe at the wedding. Now, the reason I'm showing you these pictures is to compare the simple-hearted faith of these Hasidim with also the other guests that we had for Shabbat. So this Shabbat, we not only hosted the elite Sayeret Golani unit at the farm, which was incredible, and I want to go into that another time, but also the parents and siblings of the late Harel Masood, who is a young, sweet, holy, God-fearing shepherd farmer who volunteered with us, and we had the privilege of getting to know him. Here's a picture of Harel that you can see. He was murdered less than 2 months ago in a horrific terrorist attack in Samaria. And what I saw in these two seemingly very different groups was a human manifestation of the embodiment of a verse in this week's Torah portion, which is perhaps one of the most important verses and directives in the Torah, as if such a thing could even be said. But if it was, so it's Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 3. Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. You shall be wholehearted with Hashem your God. That's from Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 3. Now, of course, this is a translation. Some people define tamim as simple, others as wholehearted, others as pure. But to me, it's really like a mixture of all of those words put together and something beyond all of it. It's the faith that I see manifested in Israel, in Jerusalem, and at our farm every single day. This faith is demanded of us to be here. So many things happen which we don't know why. How could this be good? It turns out to be for the good, but it gets more difficult and more challenging as time goes on. And yes, my friends, it's also the faith that so many of you have. It's the faith that I see in your hearts. I continue to be inspired by all of you, in the fellowship and our fellowship connections, and in the many interactions that I'm blessed to have with you. So all of you know I'm saying the special Kaddish prayer for the dead for my father. And there I stood, side by side, literally shoulder to shoulder, saying the prayer in perfect synchronicity with the father of Harel, who's saying the prayer for his son. And the difference is that I'm saying the prayer for my father as the world should be, a son mourning for his father. And he's saying the prayer for his son. And it would be understandable that he would not legitimately want to do this, want to say this. That's not the way things should go. A father should not have to bury his son. And you'd think that'd be the last thing that he would be doing, sanctifying and praising God in the wake of the devastating loss of his son. But there he was, by my side, with simple faith, praising God. And this is the time to reflect on this in the month of Elul, as we prepare for the high holidays, because that's the very heart of the work that we're doing in Elul. In less than a month, we're going to be celebrating Rosh Hashanah, in which we accept the yoke of heaven and we coronate Hashem as the king of the world, as king of our hearts, as king in our hearts. And what does that mean? How do we fear our king? How do we love our king? By accepting his kingship with simple hearts of faith and love. By accepting and even really embracing the circumstances of our lives, no matter how painful and difficult they may be. And we all have something in our lives that's hard to accept. We each have questions. We each have doubts. We each have fears. It's human. But what does Hashem tell us in the verses leading up to that directive to be simple and wholehearted before him? Here it is. Let no one be found among you who consigns a son or a daughter to the fire, or who is an augur or a soothsayer, a diviner, a sorcerer, one who casts spells, or one who consults with ghosts or familiar spirits, or one who inquires of the dead. For anyone who does such things is abhorrent to Hashem, and it is because of these abhorrent things that Hashem, your God, is dispossessing them before you. Hashem does not, in the land of faith, in the land of Israel, we don't do these things of taking control. Hashem doesn't want us giving into this very human impulse of seeking to take control of things. Because when we seek to take control of things, what are we doing really? We're essentially taking his place as God. We're seeking to usurp his throne and to call the shots of what happens in our lives, of what happens in this world. But that's not only impossible for us to do, but it's the opposite of what Hashem wants. Hashem wants our hearts. He wants a relationship with us. He wants our faith. And that relationship is most beautifully manifested in wholeheartedly walking before him and knowing that while sometimes it is unbearably painful, everything he does in our lives is an act of love for us and for our own good. So, the great commentator Rashi, he says on this verse, possibly one of the best Rashis in the whole Torah. He says this, the verse is, thou shalt be perfect, wholehearted, simple with the Lord thy God. And what does Rashi say? Walk before him wholeheartedly. Put your hope in him and do not attempt to investigate the future. But whatever it may be that comes upon you, accept it wholeheartedly. And then you will be with him and become his portion. It's beautiful. I actually want to read from you, even though I'm sorry I'm going so long, Jeremy. This is what Ramban Nachmanides says. He says on the verse, thou shalt be wholehearted with the eternal thy God. This is what he says. The meaning thereof is that we're to direct our hearts to him only and believe that he alone does everything. It is he who knows the truth about all future events, and from his prophets or from his pious ones, in other words, from the Urim V'Tumim, right, that the high priest wears, only that we inquire from Hashem about future events. We are not to inquire of the astrologers or from anyone else, or by any means to trust that their words will be fulfilled. Instead, if we hear any prediction of the diviners, we should say, everything is in the hands of heaven. For he is the God of gods, who is supreme above all, the omnipotent one over everything, who changes the set order of the stars and the constellations at his will, who frustrates the tokens of the impostors and makes diviners mad. And we're to believe that future events will occur according to man's drawing closer to his service. Therefore, after the warning against inquiring about future events from diviners and the seeking on behalf of the living of the dead, he stated that you are to be wholehearted with God in all these matters and not to be afraid of those who tell of things to come. Rather, you should inquire of his prophet, and him you shall hearken. And this is the opinion of Onkelos, who translated, you shall be wholehearted in fear of the eternal your God, meaning that you should not be deficient in fear of him, for whole, tamim, indicates perfection in a thing. Perfection in a thing. Just as aset tamim, right, he refers, a lamb that is perfect, means that one who is without blemish or deficiency. That's how our faith is to be. This verse before us constitutes a positive commandment. I've already mentioned this in the connection with the verse, and you shall be wholehearted. And so, my friends, I want to bless all of us that we are able to simplify, to be pure and wholehearted with Hashem, to lovingly accept what he does in our lives. And with that acceptance, may we merit to enter the upcoming year with a Shana Tova Umetuka, a good and a sweet new year. And we've taught this before. Why do we say good and sweet? Because we know everything is good, but not everything is sweet. Not everything is revealed good. But by accepting everything is good, may we merit to have everything not only be good, but to be revealed good, to be sweet goodness as well. Shalom, my friends. Be in touch. Eager to see you next week.